you know that formula we're all taught for success? It's pretty simple. Just work hard, be consistent, and you'll get a fair reward. But what if that's a lie? What if the universe doesn't actually operate on fairness, but on avalanches?
This one idea right here is the whole point of our explainer. It completely flips our understanding of effort and reward on its head. See, we imagine our progress is this steady, predictable climb. But what if the reality is way more chaotic and, honestly, way more explosive?
And that forces us to ask a really critical question. If the universe plays by a totally different set of rules, are you even playing the right game? Is your entire strategy built for a world that, well, doesn't actually exist?
To figure that out, we've got to understand the kind of universe we're really living in. It's not the neat and tidy one we expect. Nope, it's an avalanche universe.
Okay, so this is the mental model we're all basically born into, the bell curve. And it's comfortable, right? Because it's predictable. It tells us most things cluster right around the average, and that those huge extreme outcomes are super rare. It promises a world that just makes sense.
But what if that is the wrong analogy entirely? I want you to forget that neat curve for a second. Instead, picture something much simpler, a growing pile of sand. A system that looks totally stable on the surface, but is secretly, quietly, building towards chaos.
And this brings us to the core idea, the Sandpile Rule. Now, this isn't just some clever metaphor. It's a real concept, and it's rooted in physics. It's called self-organized criticality.
So the process itself is deceptively simple. You add 1 grain of sand, nothing happens. You add thousands more grains, and the pile just gets bigger. But underneath it all, it's reaching this critical state of instability. And then, one final, identical grain of sand triggers a total collapse. And here's the key takeaway. Most of your actions do nothing until one action does everything.
This is the scientific principle behind it all. Self-organized criticality. It's this idea that complex systems, and I'm talking everything from forests and earthquakes to financial markets, they all naturally evolve to a tipping point. They become primed for a massive chain reaction that can be triggered by something totally tiny and unpredictable.
So, how does a physics concept about sand piles apply to your success? Well, we're leaving the nice, safe bell curve behind and entering a totally different territory, the power law world.
Here's the difference in a nutshell. On the left, you've got the bell curve world we all expect to live in. But on the right, that's the power law world we actually live in. And in this world, most of your efforts, they yield almost nothing. Meanwhile, a tiny, tiny fraction of events create basically all of the impact. In a power law world, the average is a myth. There are only extremes.
And the distribution is probably more extreme than you even think. I mean, forget the 80-20 rule. In a true power law world, a tiny 1% of the causes can drive 80, 90%, or even more of the results. It's a universe of winner-take-all outcomes. And you see this everywhere, right? A handful of movies completely dominate the box office. A few startup investments generate all the returns for a venture capital fund. One viral article can launch an entire career. The thing is, they aren't just a little more successful. They're exponentially more successful. They are the avalanches. Okay, so if we live in this unpredictable, avalanche-prone world, how do we navigate it? Well, the answer isn't to just work harder at the same safe thing. It's to change your whole game by making what's called an asymmetric bet.
This admission from the source material is so powerful because it's just so relatable. So many of us have been there, grinding away, being disciplined, doing everything right, but seeing no real progress. We were playing by bell curve rules in a power law world. We were diligently adding our one little grain of sand every single day to a pile that was never, ever going to collapse.
This requires a big mental shift, moving away from consistency and towards persistence. Look, consistency is like jogging the same mile every day and hoping you'll somehow win a marathon. Persistence, on the other hand, is trying different training routines, different diets, new strategies, knowing that most of them are going to fail, but that just one of them might be the breakthrough. It's about seeking the avalanche, not just adding to the pile.
So here's the playbook. First, you look for bets with a small capped downside, where you know exactly what you stand to lose, and it's not much. But, and this is key, the potential upside has to be exponential. We're talking 10x, 100x, maybe even more. Then, you make lots of these small, calculated bets, knowing full well that most will fail. And you just persist through those small failures until one finally triggers that massive chain reaction. So I'll leave you with this thought. What if success isn't a slow, steady climb, but a sudden, massive shift? What is the one small grain of sand you can add this week, that one little asymmetric bet that just might trigger your avalanche?